Hey, hey.
Hey, hey, peace and blessings, peace and blessings.
Man, it's
I
Wednesday
say
already.
it is wonderful, whimsical Wednesday.
WWW.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Peace to everyone who is coming into the
Thank you for
room.
coming in. I
Hey,
appreciate that.
hey.
Hey.
Hey, love.
Oh, sucky, sucky. Look who it is.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Hope you are having a wonderful week. It's Wednesday already. Lots going on. We're really excited. I mean, this has been a powerful week already. Really looking forward to this conversation. There he is. I'm sorry. I'm going to invite him. Make sure my sound is turned up.
Hey, hey.
Yeah.
Yeah. How are you all?
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you all?
Man, we are wonderful.
Good. I have one thing for Desmond.
We are magnetic.
One thing. Just don't ask me what's in the cup, okay?
All right, so what's in the cup?
It's been one of those days. I'll say that.
All right.
Listen, no, listen.
I'll take that cup.
No, this will stop with you. Because this will stop with you. So I need you to give me a minute. Just give me a minute. Next one of you cats, because I want to use a different word. The next one of you cats to get on this live and got a drink, and I ain't got none. We're gonna have a personal conversation offline. You understand that? You guys got the trend. Don't do that. You guys got the trend. You the last one.
It's been one of those days. It's just been one of those days. So yeah.
That's all right. Whatever you need.
There we go. But I'm happy to be here.
Right.
Thank y'all for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for being here. So for those who are joining us who don't know who we are, my name is Jewel Guy, and I'm the author and creator of Dear Black Men. And this is my amazing, phenomenal muse of a husband who was the inspiration, one of the inspirations for the book, and really diving into creating safe space for Black men to be heard and understood without judgment and without interruption. So,
yeah. I appreciate you listening to it.
Yes, absolutely. Appreciate you. So we have an amazing guest tonight.
Yes.
Mr. J. Darius Greene. I have your book on hand.
Oh, man. Thank you.
Yes. I have your book on hand.
Getting that star treatment over here.
Listen, as soon as I got it, I just started reading through it. And I must say, you have so many, like, one-liners that just will have you in meditation for a while. Just thinking about what you said, right? So before I get into that, I want you to just introduce yourself to our viewers, who you are, who you be, how you show up in the world, and we'll get started.
Thank you. And let me start by saying thank you again for having me on the platform. And congratulations to you, Jewel, for everything that you have, that you're experiencing right now. You know, sometimes, you know, we put the work in and then life just shows up for us, the work that we've done, we've gotten there. So kudos to everything that you're doing right now. But my name is J. Darius Greene. I'm a writer, photographer, educator. I'm a Virgo, a few other things. But, you know, I'm a Black gay man, of course, but I'm also a proud Black gay man. And that's who I, you know, represent myself in this world. But I do realize that I know that I'm a Black man first, if that makes sense. So, yeah. So now I'm living back in North Carolina at home, living with my mama, which is interesting and lovely within itself. So, so yeah, that's who I am. And I see my sister just joined too. So hi, Tori.
Awesome. Hi, sis. Awesome. So I wanted to start because I wrote a few of your poems down so I would remember the page numbers and all of that. So one of the ones that really struck me, it was One Day. And it says, and one day I felt and everything changed. And that was like so intriguing for me. So I'm wondering if you can remember like your thought process when you wrote that, and even just being a man at this in these times, like what, how did that help you navigate?
So I was gonna I went through a couple of titles of the book, but one of the titles that I was gonna go with was "And One Day I Felt." And I even ordered bracelets and everything about it. And one day I fell, because I feel that as people, we function. You know, something happens and we just go into auto, you know, mode, or I've been here before, let me now do this. But when you actually sit, and right now what we're in, it's really requiring us, or it's inviting us, let me say that, to really just sit and to feel and to be with what is going on. And I had to realize, and the way I wrote that was, when you get to a point where you're just functioning and you're not feeling, you're not allowing yourself to really grow, to heal. You really are avoiding. And so I had to be with myself and say, you've got to feel. You know, you've got to feel everything that's going on. And when you do that, things will begin to change, because you'll begin to see things differently, but you'll also begin to, most importantly, operate differently as well. So yeah, so that really came from the actual title of the book, but wanted to get out of this, you know, auto mode functioning, to actually start feeling what I'm actually going through.
Absolutely. And how long would you say it like took you to get to that point? Do you feel like you were like honoring your feelings even as a younger child, or was that something that you came about as you were growing?
I think I think that I'm still arriving to that, if that makes sense. I mean, there's some areas where I realize, okay, you know, I tell people all the time to like treat your triggers. And so I'm learning to treat my triggers. And when I try to treat my triggers, I know when I'm going into auto mode. But it definitely took me a while to get to that, because it will be like, you know, okay, here's this situation. I'm going to revert back to what I did before, because I didn't allow myself to actually process it, to even feel it. So it took some time to get to that point. And I honestly, you know, I'm still there and living back home with my mother, love her dearly. But, you know, I try to instill to her to say, I'm a grown man. Like, but I know that mothers, and even fathers for that matter, you'll always be a kid to them. So I have to realize that when she's saying something that's really triggering me, well, I want to revert back to what really I would do before. Like, no, I got it. I'm good. Just today, she said, I made you the other day she had made some tuna salad for me or something. And I'm like, okay, great, but I don't want that. And then we kind of had this back and forth. But then tonight she said, well, hey, I made this. And I said, you know what? Okay, thank you. I'll consider that as an option. I had to learn to not do what I did before, because that's her way of showing and expressing love, you know, towards me. So it's an ongoing process. But for me, again, I'm realizing when I am triggered and saying, okay, sit with this for a while, process it, and then move forward.
Awesome. Awesome. It's funny that you say accepting like her ways of showing you love. Last night we were talking about with E and Lady Sarcasm about how she wants to like decorate and, you know, clean up his studio room and things like that. And she said, you know, I had to realize that I didn't even ask him. Like, did he really want did he really want me to do that? Right? And so in the same way, it sounds pretty similar.
Yeah, and then what happens is, this is where communication is key, because what happens is we get upset when the person doesn't respond the way that we want them to something that we did not tell them that we were going to do in the first place. And Lord knows that is that's the work I have to do. And so what I was sharing with someone the other day was, you know, I have to learn to be considerate without conceding. And that consideration requires me to not, you know, do what I've always done before. I have to do things differently. And I can credit that to me being back in a rural area, rural North Carolina. You know, in front of me is field. It's a cotton field one year, it's a cornfield the other. But just to sit on the front porch and to just be still and just really be with it. And whatever that is, when I get home from work, I just go straight to the front porch and I'm there. I will be there now, but it's actually raining outside. So it's just been an evolving process for me. So yeah.
Awesome. So you talked about quarantine allowing us or inviting us. I love that term. Inviting us to be still and to sit with some of the things that we are feeling. What are some of the things that you are discovering about yourself during this quarantine?
Oh, I recently bought a bike. And just so you know, I'm a storyteller, so I promise you I will get to your answer.
It's all right. Go
I
ahead.
recently bought a bike, and I put a video up yesterday. I was talking to my dad about him trying to fix his bike. And he's like, well, okay, the bike you bought, is it a 10 speed? Is it a 30? I'm like, I don't know. Like, how many speeds can one have on a bike? He said, well, you can have an 8 speed, a 10 speed, a 13 speed. I said, no, I think it's just a 10 speed. But even just that conversation about that, it's reminding me of the things that I used to enjoy doing as a little boy, riding a bike, being by myself, thinking, being creative, watching a great TV show. And I can also credit that with the quarantine, but also being, back in my hometown and being with my parents. I'm reminded of the simple things that I've enjoyed, and I wrote about this, and I shared this with a friend the other day. I'm beginning to question myself to think, where did I make it so complicated? And and as I shared in my blog on my website, is that I said that life has been easy to me, but I've made it a little bit harder for me. And so being back at home in quarantine has just said, really go back to those simple things that you enjoy, riding a bike, sitting on the front porch, just walking and, discovering things along the side of the road, whether I found just like a random shoe the other day and asking myself like, well, what's the story behind this shoe? It's just, for me, the quarantine and of course being back at home, it's just those simple things that I just really enjoy. And it's taking me back to the familiar.
I like that. I like that. Another one of your poems says, and this is also attributed to something you just said. This one is sifting. And I like that you also have sifting on the back of the book. Almost like what you can almost anticipate reading through the book. And it says, what are you doing? Some asked. Figuring it out, I replied. And like, those 4 lines are so simple, but it's so much. What does that mean to you? Because I know how it resonated with me, but how does that resonate with you, and how you communicate with people and approach things?
Yeah, well, I'm learning, for me, that I always said that life is an arrival, and but as soon as you get to where you're going somewhere else. And for me right now, I left a job that I was working in Maryland for. I was there for 16 years. And then just one day I said, I want something else. And so for me, that was me sifting to want something, another experience. And yeah, people did ask, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but something is pulling me to just something different. Hopefully it's something greater, but whatever it is, I'll figure it out. And sometimes you really just don't know. I think what COVID has shown us is that, yes, you can have the most intended plans, but something, riding a bike, you throw a stick in that spoke and you're going to be all over the place. And then it does require you to have to figure it out. So life is just, for me, it has always been a constant, what now? I think for me, people plan, and my friends who know me know I'm probably not the greatest planner. But somehow what happens is that I experience things and then I look back over and I say, that's why you had to do that. That's why I had to, meet, you all that night in an open mic. And here we are now. Who would have ever thought that these dots would have connected there? And that still is for me to say, I'm going to figure it out later on. Some people plan, I figure it out later on. But sometimes you do things that don't make sense to you and they won't make sense to other people. But that, to me, is what sifting actually is. Now, in your sifting, you can always do, as my great grandmother said, to certainly be particular, and as I love alliteration, by the way. And as I say that, on your ascent, you should assess your associations. And so that is still a sifting within itself in terms of, okay, these are good people. These are maybe not people that are the best for me. That's still a sifting there. And whether it's a relationship, a friendship, a job, whatever, you know what? This might not be the best thing for me. I'm going to try to move on to the next thing. We're constantly arriving, but we're still constantly sifting to hopefully get to something greater. And you may or may not figure it out. I mean, you may look back and say, what in the world was that about? Why did I do that? So, yeah.
Exactly. I like that. Analyze your associations. That's, man. Oh my goodness. So when I think of you, I think of such a strong presence who is, I wrote these things down, and this is alliteration as well. I think of acceptance, awareness, and affirming.
Mm.
And as I read through your book and as I read through poems, so there's one that was I Am Us, right?
Mm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
love this poem because it's such a it's like in the beginning you say you are a defiance of system.
Mm.
The places where people would want to push you, you
Mm-hmm.
are that
Mm.
and maybe
Mm-hmm.
five other things, right? Where have you always been very self-aware? In these conversations that we've been having, I noticed that awareness is something that manhood encompasses, a
Mm.
self-awareness and an acceptance. How have you arrived to that place? I know that we're still on this journey and we're
Mm-hmm.
still finding things about ourselves, but for you, like that awareness that you have of yourself and that unapologetic affirmation that you give of yourself, standing
Mm-hmm.
out instead of fitting in.
Mm-hmm.
Like where does that tenacity and courage come from? And how do you find yourself just living in that space?
Whew, okay. Well, thank you for those words. Um, I goes back to what I said earlier about, where did it get complicated? I've always known who I was. Um, I've always been very assertive and very opinionated. I'm going to always have something to say. If you look at my report card from the fourth grade, my teacher wrote, he mumbles under his breath. I'm going to always have a rebuttal to something because I have something to say. And, part of me that not necessarily wants to be heard, but, sometimes you deserve to be heard. But I've always known who I am. I've always accepted myself. The awareness of who I am. I've had a very supportive, loving, encouraging family. Yes, there's been, some people that may have like, you might want to do this or think about this, but it hasn't wavered me in terms of not being my full authentic self. I've had to. I was credited. A friend has said to me that I should credit the DC area for really for me really coming into me being a Black gay man because coming from a rural area, this is where it goes to. We all need examples. We need examples of fatherhood. We need examples of being a mother. We need examples of what a strong, encouraging, supportive family is, like you all. So I needed that same thing. And so as a Black gay man growing up in a very rural area of 23,000 people in the entire county, and in the growing up and being born in 1977, I didn't have those examples. So somewhere I had to create that, but I credit the DC area with tons of examples of like, wow, you're a professional Black gay man. There are others here also, so that it really for me just affirmed and built on who I already was. The challenge for me, I go back to again, is that when I know I'm in a situation or doing something that I know I just should not even be doing in the first place. It's like, why are you here? And I love Toni Morrison, and she talks about, there's an interview she did on Charlie Rose, and he said something to her like, your life must be so interesting. And she's like, my life is really boring. But she's like, all I have to do is be a human and just be good to write, be creative, and be a human to other people. And she says, if I do something stupid along the way, that's my own fault. I don't have to do it. The awareness is knowing when you're doing something that you don't need to be doing. And it's like, well, okay, I did this. How do I now move on from that? So for me, I've always been myself. I've had people no one's never told me to not do something in terms of my family. And if they did, that sifting again, I know what to brush off, what to listen to, because I know what's going to be good for me. Now, what they say may be great. I may not take it, but I might say, you know what? That was right. I should have listened to that. But I've always just been very aware of who I am. And no one's ever said to me, who are you? What are you doing? Go off and do this, whatever. No one's ever said that. And if they did, I'm like, okay, that I'm very clear on when people say things that's not supportive and affirming of who one is, that has nothing to do with me. I'm very aware. And I've always been that way. I can think of a story where growing up, my grandmother said something to me. You remember back in the day, people used to wear like two pair of socks, you just like stack them, you know, well, at least that's what we did. Like you would stack the socks, like, you know, fluff them up. And I'll never forget my grandmother making a comment and saying something like, "Oh, you know, that boy's gonna grow up to be gay," or something like this. But I knew that even at like 9 or 10 years old, that what her saying that had nothing to do with me, even at that age. Because guess what? I'm gonna still wear my socks the way I want to wear my socks. I'm gonna do exactly what I want to do, and you know, I've been able to do that, and I've been fortunate to have people that support me, family, friends, to continue being who I am.
Out of that, I heard just like knowing what to internalize and what not to. People always have something to say about everybody, right? No matter what it is. But knowing how to, like, to your point, sift things out. And it's good for you when it's enriching to your soul, and you internalize, you take it in, and you let that blossom into something else. Anything else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And you know, you talked about, you know, the poem I Am Us, and I wrote that because, you know, there's another poem I wrote, or it talks about how the world will, when you see a black man, there was an article recently, I didn't read it, but it talked about, I didn't get a chance to read it yet, but it talked about how black boys, how they're cute when they're younger, but when they get older, they're seen as a threat. But so as we age as black men, what the world puts on us to tell us who we should actually be. And so what I Am Us is really saying is that I'm really being myself. I'm myself, but there are others that are just like me. And we are not going to be who you tell us to be, because guess what? We're not the same. You know, we may have similar desires maybe, but how we go about getting those desires is going to be very different. So I'm going to say to you that I'm just like you, but I'm still an individual in this collective that we actually are. And so, yes, as a black man, I'm already a defiance to a system, but I'm also, as a black gay man, I'm still a defiance to a whole nother system that the world has that, you know, black people have. It's just so many different, you know, intersections to it. Yeah, it's a lot of different intersections.
Yeah, so that brings up the point of one of my phrases for this week is like invisible weights. The weights that men have to carry, in quotations, have to. Whether it is something that is placed on you through society's burdens, through families' burdens. My question to you is, what would be some of the invisible weights that you might carry or have carried before that most people wouldn't even think about?
There's a Fiona Apple, who I adore, has a new album out called Fetch the Bolt Cutters. And one of the songs on the album is called A Heavy Balloon. And really, a heavy balloon it will never rise because of the weight, to your point, that's actually in the balloon. I think for me, it's been sort of this, even though I'm affirming and I affirm others, I'm confident in who I am, but I do like to affirm others. That has also led to somewhere people pleasing, if that makes sense. And it goes back to what I said earlier about that, you know, being considerate but not conceding who I am. And so I think that that people pleasing for me has those invisible weights that I put on myself first has come from that, in the sense of, okay, going to spaces and then saying, well, are you going to fully accept me for who I am because of your own issue? So it's almost like I'm taking on what they say and say, okay, well, because of this, you know, I'm going to shift who I am, as opposed to trying to find ways to, again, invite you into my space to sort of educate, you know, or inform other people about who I am. But I think those have been some of the invisible weights for myself, that I put on myself. Now, I certainly am aware of what the world will put on me, but I think I already walk against that current, you know, already, because, and I'm not going to harp on necessarily, you know, me being a black gay man, because that's who I am, but there's still a whole nother, not necessarily another dimension, that's the wrong word, but it can put on some additional weights to say, how do I navigate this if I've never had a model or mentors? What do I do? That figuring it out still is still there. But that, you know, conceding for me who I fully am, has probably been the biggest weight I put on myself. Yeah. And like, again, it goes back to those things that for me, it's always what I put on myself. It's always what I put on myself. So yeah. And then learning, okay, I don't need to do this anymore, or let me shift and move on from this. So yeah.
Right. I like how, one, that you're personally accountable, right? There's no blame game with you at all. It's not like
92.7% of the time there's no blame game.
Like that. I like that, right? But in this instance, just being able to like look at yourself and say like, yeah, this happened, but this is my part. This is my part in it. And I think, you know, just even as a woman being with a Black man, even before our marriage, right? I thought about, one, could I be accountable? Could I be accountable to myself? And then also the expectation that I was putting on another human being is like, can they be accountable too, right? I think that's one of the things we were talking about a little bit earlier. He was like, you know, what love looks like. And we said that this works because, you know, I came back in the room and I'm like, yeah, that's because you're accountable. He said, I listen. You know, I listen to you. You know, I hear what you're saying. And for us, listening is acting on that thing. I've heard you and I'm doing this now. So there's like so many levels. We hear manhood so much, but like having a real definition of what that looks like, right? The masculinity portion, per se. What does the manhood look like? You know, being affirming, being accountable, being, you know, responsible, all of those things, right? I've actually heard in a conversation that I think his name is Dondre Whitfield is having, male versus male, right? And he was talking about how men are of service, you know, to their community, to their family. And when I hear that, I can imagine what the male side is saying, you know, like, be of service. You know, what about me? But a man has already accepted like his role and knows that he's going to get what he needs from that exchange. So just being personally accountable is a really big thing. And I'd like to know. Let me see. I have another poem written down. Hold on.
And as you look for that, if you don't mind, as you look for that, what you just said, there's a poem I have in the book called May Not Be. And it really says, like, you know, you may not be, but you sure do. And so, and I think and I actually, when I shared, my book release, I said, not even knowing it, I really wrote that poem for my dad, because really what that is about being present and being there and being consistent. And really what it's saying is that you may do these things because you may think I need it, or it really can be an act, but who you be is the core of you. It's your foundation, and everything that you do operates from who you be. I mean, you see, and like, you know, the who you be is that you are a person of high character. You are a person of service. You are a person of presence. And so, but sometimes we may do these things, but that we're not operating from our full selves because that's not who we be. But as I said, the end of the poem is that we're really just, especially in that situation, my dad, I think, was looking for stillness and calmness and just to say, it will be okay. You know, we all need assurance, like it'll be okay. And but who we be and operating from that, we have to arrive, I think, to do that. And maybe that's the arrival, our operating from our consistent being of who we are. Maybe that's the goal. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's powerful. It says real love. It says, want yourself more than they need you. Want yourself more than they need you. And I think about some of the stuff that we just had in this conversation about people pleasing, right? Because people pleasing is usually a pull. It's somebody wanting something from you. And we exchange that most of the time for a feeling. Feeling, right, self-respect.
Mm-hmm.
So like a wanting, a pseudo connection,
Mm-hmm.
right? But that hit me because wanting yourself, like loving yourself, and I think also like making healthy boundaries for yourself
Mm-hmm.
goes so far in
Mm-hmm.
all of it. Tell
Mm-hmm.
me your thoughts about this.
Well, it's like one of my friend Tremaine always says, he's like, no is a complete sentence. And, my no is really for whatever I'm saying no to is for me first. I mean, and there's another poem there called Me First. It's like, I'm mine first before I'm anyone else's. And so realizing that if you're doing something out of someone else's need, you're really not benefiting maybe not benefiting either of them, because you're not doing it out of pureness. You may be doing what I just said earlier, you may be doing, but you're doing it's not who you really be. And so you're like, you know what, I'm gonna do it just to, oh gosh, my mom does this. I'm learning, there's someone that she was getting to know in her, early 70s. And so I'm like, she said, well, I don't want to, talk to him anymore. And I said, well, why do you talk to him? Well, we're still friends. I said, well, when you talk to him, does he ask you how your day is going? She's like, yeah. I said, but when I hear the conversation, I normally hear him doing all the talking. And I'm like, and I asked, what are you getting from this? And,
Right.
I'm thinking that you're meeting his need of needing someone to talk to, because I know you all talked before about he cannot be by with himself. I don't think he can be with himself. And so therefore, I think she's doing this. And I've certainly done it before too. That's why I wrote that. I've met someone else's need that has really been to my own sacrifice. So
Yeah.
yeah, to say, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? You're not doing this. You're doing this because you want to people please. But sometimes we also see that as help. And and when we help someone out, they might come back to us and we're like, why is this coming back to me? Because guess what? You did it before. They think you're going to continue to do that because you were of service. But by setting those healthy boundaries and saying, I'm not as Shonda Rhimes said in her book, The Year of Yes, when she was wanting to say no to something, she would just say, that's not going to work for me. That's putting yourself first. That's not going to work for me. Sometimes, we might justify, well, that's not going to work for me because, I can't take you to the store because I have to pick my nephew up from work. Well, no.
That's me.
I just can't do it. And so really what I said before about treating, I'm learning to say, just stop. Just say yes, thank you, no, and move on from
it. Go
So
ahead.
to your point, I know when I'm people pleasing because I feel like I gotta give an explanation.
Yeah.
And whenever I feel like I gotta give an explanation, I know I'm people pleasing. Whenever I gotta give an explanation, I feel like I'm people pleasing.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Because you're really trying to soften the blow, maybe, of the no that you've done. You're like, well, you don't want to come off as a butthole or whatever, or like, mean, or, and it's also maybe say, I can't do this now, but, or I can't do this, but maybe I can do this. Yeah. And I was having a conversation. Yeah.
No, please.
Well, no, I was having a conversation with a friend recently about someone that was asking for help, and I said, well, if you were or the person was asking them to do something that they did not feel comfortable doing. So what I said to them was, well, okay, did you even get to the root of what their need was? Because while you cannot do that, if you might say, well, hey, I can't do this, but no, I cannot take you to the store, well, for whatever, but tell me, what do you need? They might say, well, I need to go to the store because I need some brown sugar. Well, I have brown sugar. I can give you the brown sugar, but I can't take you to the store. So it's really getting to the root of what their need is, because again, I think for me, it goes back to the communication piece. And really, there's another poem there called Use Your Words. We all have to use our words, and we don't use our words. And so by not using our words, or setting boundaries, and using your words is also asking, soliciting, what do you want? To then say, okay, I can't do this. No, I can't do this, but maybe I can help out in another way. That may really get to the point of what their need is in the first place. I hope that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. It's interesting that you just said use your words. So King B98 says, I just avoid having to verbalize the no. And for you to say, like, you have to say no, right? So King, let me know how do you non-verbally say no? What are some of the things that you are actually saying instead of no? And also, why are you avoiding saying no?
And I wonder, Definitely you were saying that, you find yourself justified. I wonder, even for you, like, and here I am asking questions, like, where do you think that actually came from, for you? Because I think that's a little bit rare for, like men who traditionally see themselves, especially in a marriage or a household, see themselves as the head of the household. So it's almost like I think that I know that my grandfather, for example, his yeses meant yes and his no's meant no's. He did not have to give an explanation. So I think that's a little bit, for me at least, I'm like, I'm used to when a man says no, it's just no. Like, well, I can't get you this bike because da 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 da.
So
right.
when I say when I feel like I gotta give an explanation, I don't have a problem with the explanation, but I guess that's based on my feeling because I always give explanation anyway. When it makes me feel like I'm not respecting myself, like I'm giving you this just to shut you up. Me, like I'm people pleasing. If I give you an explanation because I feel like I want to give, because I want you to give me an explanation. So I try to treat people the way I would want to be treated. So yeah, when I talk, I want an explanation, but I don't have an expectation for an explanation. Does that make sense? Because if I have an expectation, then I'm gonna be mad at you. As long as I don't expect it, but I honestly can explain that to you. And if you say no, then I'll leave it be.
Yeah.
But me, I don't like saying no. Or no, let me rephrase it. I like saying no, but I don't like not giving a person the reason why I say no. Does it seem like you just want to be on some power with
you? Yeah. Like, one thing that my ex used to always say was that clarity is better than approval.
Yeah.
And so I think that one of the things I will give him credit for, no, he's actually a good dude. But really, you're saying that by providing that clarity, the explanation is really in the clarity there.
Yeah. I just want to make sure we speak in the same language. Because, like, when my wife asks me, she said, well, babe, can you do me a favor? I won't say yes or no. I say it depends.
He does. It
depends on what it is. So now, I know she might fire back with an attitude. But why are you mad when I've just stated how I feel about it? I will do it based on what it is.
And I think that's like, what do you call a certain type of response? It's something that I'm used to, right? So if I ask, can I ask you a favor? Yeah, a condition. If I say, can I ask you a favor, I'm just expecting you to say, yeah, go ahead. It's not often that you hear people say, like, nah, I gotta hear what it is first.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay, I get that. But yeah, it's like, well, let me hear what it is, and then I'll consider what my response is. Which I think is I think that's also a fair response because you're still inviting in the consideration, and then you'll decide what you want to do. Yeah.
So you said be considerate, but be considerate, but that doesn't mean you have to concede, right? Don't
concede who you are or change who you are.
So
yeah.
So in saying that, that's exactly why I say things like that because I'm gonna consider how you feel, or how you feel. I do what I want to do. So if it's something that I feel like I can do, okay, what you want? What's up? Because if I say yeah, and then I'm like, I don't know, you can be like, well, you say yeah.
Right.
If I say it depends, you already know it's 50-50. Because really, when most people ask you questions, they're not really asking you; they're telling you in a question form.
Yes, I agree with that.
Come on, go with me. I didn't ask you; I told you. But it sounds like I'm asking you.
Yeah.
I just want you to, like you said, soften the blow. And we've all people pleased. I've done it more times in life than I admit. I can even know that I struggle with it sometimes. When I'm struggling, I do things like that. Well, it depends. Because I know my boundaries. Like we said, I have boundaries. I've learned. So when I grew up, I thought, you had to cuss them out to get your boundaries. I lived that way for time. And that's not really the case. I've learned that I can still say no, and I still can be productive. We don't got to fuss and fight. Because when you can't tell people no, they can't communicate.
I call that my hug, slap, hug approach. It's like, so in that situation, I'm like, well, tell me what you're asking. That's the hug. And then when you tell me, if I'm like, no, I can't do that, but I hope you figure this out. That's the final hug. It's not been, I'm not being an asshole. I'm really setting my own balance, but I'm still letting you know that I'm concerned about what you're asking, especially with someone that, that you care about a friend or whatever, that you know that your no might come off to them as a little bit, you know, like, well, wow, like, where the hell did that come from? Like, I just knew you were going to do this, but it still says that you're being considered, but you're not getting off your own intentions for whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I think that's a healthy boundary too. You just reminded me of my grandmother because she knows that I'll just do. And then my mom was talking to her, and she was like kind of planning around what was going to happen or what have you. And my mom was like, "Well, did you ask Jewel?" And she was like, "No." And she said, "Well, why not?" She said, "Well, I mean, she typically just does it."
Right, yeah.
And so it's not even in her thought process to think like, let me ask her first, wait for a response, and then plan around it. It's just what we have conditioned ourselves to do. It's Nana, so I'm going to do it, right? I think in changing the way that we communicate and creating some healthy boundaries, she now says, hey, do you have a minute? Hey, you going to be available around such and such, right? Which is healthy for her too, because I also understand that there's a way, to your point about your grandfather, like there's a way that she was taught that she communicates, whether it's verbal, nonverbal, whether it's, we say, talking in codes.
Yeah. Can I touch that?
Yes.
Can I touch that? So I'm hearing my wife talk about some things right now. As I hear her talk about, I think about some things that I may have shed some light on her about. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I speak on that?
Yeah, please.
So, and my wife saying that, I think, and hearing just this conversation, I think I helped my wife set some down. Can I say that?
Absolutely.
Because I don't know how she came up per se, but I had noticed, and her just having this conversation, like a lot of times they would talk codes, and it was just like a lot of assumptions, right? It's not even really caring about how she felt. I'm just doing it because we family, and that's what we're supposed to do. But you're not getting nothing from pouring all that money into that bank account. Just in here, I'm saying that to say, like, boundaries are very important, and she has learned over the years because she's always taught great tact, but she's learned how to draw her boundaries and not feel bad. Like, that was one of the things that I noticed that she just didn't do, and I think it's because she felt like she bared the weight of the family on her shoulders. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And because in her family, she was a high achiever. And like I say, we joke about it, but I call her she's the gold child, right? So by she had all these other people expectations on her, and I don't think until me and her got together, she just was living a life that she thought she was supposed to live and not really think about, like, well, what I want. This is not a conversation we had a lot of times, but just in hearing her have that, I realized in this relationship, she set a lot of healthy boundaries. She does it really well. And I hate it because I've helped you. And then you do the shit for me. And, whoa, time up. I helped teach you that. You can't do that with me.
She's using the tools. She's using the tools.
Exactly, right? So then that brings me back. But just hearing her, she has really learned to set boundaries, but not confrontation. Right? Say that to this point, we can definitely be considerate, but we have to concede ourselves.
Yeah.
And when I hear you say that, that reads to me, I'll do it as long as it costs me self-respect.
And absolutely.
That's all I said.
Yeah. And, you know, when you said that about, you know, growing up, the high achiever, just growing up, period, I said I want to get a mug. No one copyright this. It's called, like, you know, get shit done, or like, you just get stuff done. But I think that, you know, we can, how we're raised, we can be conditioned to be doers. And it's like, you know, and one of my friends always tells me, he's like, you love a project, like whether it's something at work, whether it's, you know, you met someone. I mean, people who know me know, I always say I've never met a stranger. I can talk to anybody about anything, but sometimes especially even with my job, I have to learn to, like, not absorb what people are, you know, what we're talking about. And then, but that discernment still says, you know what, if I have something to offer, but still that whole doing, we're like, okay, my friend will be like, this is a project, like, oh gosh, it's one of his projects. I've always said that when it comes to me and dating, and I'll tie this into the doing, I've always been the person that's like the person right before. Like, you know, that project.
Say that again?
I've always been the person like right before that person finds someone, if that makes sense. Like,
oh yeah, we
yeah,
can speak the same language. I'm the
yes,
boyfriend before the boyfriend.
yes.
Yeah, you got the same language. I'm the guy you date before the boyfriend. Yeah, that's me. That's me until I got this one. That's me. We can speak the same language. Well, we might have a different conversation now.
Yeah, but see, but still, that is still a condition of doing. It's like, you know, well, what's your own end goal in what you're doing? Like, you know, because sometimes you do things you're really meeting what I said earlier. You meet that poem. You're meeting their need, and they're really sucking from. There's another poem I have in there. Well, I talk about where, like, you know, I can't remember it, but it's more so saying about. It's called crumbs, and it's like, you know, we cannot get full. Yeah, we cannot get full of crumbs, and I have to thank Dr. Robin Smith for that, because she talks about we can't get full of crumbs, and so but we do all these things. We absorb someone's lie. We'll, you know, listen to their half truth, their almost situation. It's like, but we do that thinking that they're going to grow, and then I'm going to grow individually, but that we're going to grow together. You're getting crumbs, and so when you're doing that, you're getting what you want probably from different people, and then maybe that right before it's like, you know what, let me try to put all this together in one person to see how it works. It's almost like practice, and it's like, I got it now. I'm gonna, okay, thank you, deuces, I found it. And it's like, and then you have no one to blame but yourself for the stuff that you did that was not serving yourself first. Because everything, I feel that everything that we do for ourselves, everything else is an add-on to it. We're building onto that. It's okay, I have who I am. I'm adding all these blessings on top of, you know, who I am. So yeah, trust me, I've been the one before in a couple of
well, I was, like I said, until I got my queen. I lived in that lane, so like I understand. I reveled. Yeah, that's for another conversation.
Okay.
That's another conversation. Well, I definitely can relate. I definitely can relate to that. I just think when referring to boundaries, if we can create healthy boundaries, we mad. Like most of us, we allow a person to push us to a point, and then we get mad about, I ain't doing shit. You understand what I'm saying? But if we just you're out of that, no, I'm not. I can't do that.
Yeah.
And then I don't have a problem giving you an explanation. But you know why? Because I'm still not going to do it.
Yeah.
Most time we don't want to give explanation because we don't want to feel like we don't have the words to give explanation. We just want a person to respect you. You know, I'm gonna tell you no, and I'm gonna tell you why I want you to respect my.
Yeah. And
I have no problem with the explanation.
Yeah, and I think to your point earlier about, like, you know, maybe asking what the question is when someone asks you to do something. I think if it's someone that you have or trying to establish something with, for example, you might say, well, I've had to learn to say, to your point about not even justifying the explanation piece here. Well, let me tell you why I can't do this, or when you ask me to do this, what that means to me. And I know that why I can't do this is because when you do that, this is what I still need to work on maybe within myself. That's why I can't do it. So it has nothing to do with you. It's really all about me. And that's why I cannot do this right now. I might get to a point I can arrive to do that, but yeah.
So if you say that to me, I know not to ask. If you just told me no, I just feel like you being a dick because you don't want to explain it to me.
I get it. Yeah, I get that. And
explain it to me.
Yeah, and I think
I'm sorry. And if you explain it to me, you go by you. No,
I'm sorry. Yeah, but I think what I hear is and by doing that, that shows that you respect the other person and you really value the relationship that you have with them, because you're saying, look, you know, someone, an ex asked me to do something before, and I was like, well, let me tell you why when you asked me to do this, what that does to me. Like, that's because I respected the relationship. And I also say, this is my thing, when people ask you to your point about you won't ask again, I think, now this may be harsh, but when people, and you still grant grace, but when you tell them what you don't like or what you have moved on from, and they take you back to that place, I don't think that those people value you. I don't think they respect you, because you're like, I've told you I moved on from this. You are a part of my moving on from this, but here you are yet trying to take me back. I moved on from that. And so don't bring it up anymore, because I moved on from it, whether it's a person, a thing, or whatever. I moved on from that. I don't drink no more, whatever it might be. Why are you trying to invite me to, whatever? It's like, I'm not doing that anymore. And I don't know if those people always who do that, who bring up, as I say, that you go bringing up old stuff, You know, I
Yeah.
don't know if those people always have your best interests at hand.
Yeah.
Oh, so I for the most part, I want to agree with you, right?
Mm.
But I also want to say sometimes when you're younger or when you're more inexperienced and you've been convicted in your ways, and once you make that flip,
Mm.
for them to see you're convicted because you were
Mm.
so convicted the other way you were. They can't understand that level of conviction because they've never been committed or convicted to anything like that.
Mm.
So,
That's good.
Mm.
so it
Mm.
has nothing to do with you. And I can only say that for person to person. I've been both person. I've been a
Mhm.
person that changed, and I've been a person like you still that same motherfucker. I've been to both people, right? And I've but in my evolution of me wanting to change, I realized, okay, they might have changed. It's going to take me a little longer. So
Mhm.
I'll say to them, like, okay, it's something you used to do. I need to really work on this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And yes, it does make sense. Yes.
Because even sometimes things with my wife that we might have did earlier, she may not be full. I'm like, you good? Like, yo, I said no.
Right.
And I'm out here like,
Right. Like, this is how I feel now.
yeah.
I think
Mm.
I think it's allowing people to grow.
Yes.
Right.
I said, please. I
Yes.
said, please. So we all love Laura Hill, right? I appreciate it. We all love Laura Hill, right?
We all love
So
what?
we all love Lauren Hill.
Oh
Lauren
yes,
Hill.
yes, yes.
Right. We all love her. We all mad at Lauren, right? Because she don't make no more music, right? So my wife says, you know the problem with Lauren Hill, the problem with Lauren Hill? And I say, what, baby? She said, people won't allow her to grow. So I say that to say sometimes when we grow, everybody's not going to like how we grow.
Yeah. She gave us the miseducation,
Oh.
right?
Mm-hmm.
At a particular time in her life where that was cultivated. And then something else happened in her life. And that's what happens to us too. We just put people at a place or pedestal depending on who they are. They don't have to be a celebrity. It could be a mother, a father, a close friend, or what have you. I'm so used to you operating in this space that when you are now doing something else, I'm thrown for a loop. I'm almost like grieving the person who used to be.
Which is
just before you jump in.
Yeah.
Just before you jump in. So when you have people like that, sure, a lot of times you don't want to around, but you need a few of those people because you need to see how committed you are to your change. If you don't have
absolutely. Yes, and I agree. And I think the Lauryn Hill analogy, I think people did not appreciate Lauryn Hill's second, the live album, because I loved it too. And I wrote a whole blog about this probably about 2 years ago, how really I think that what she was talking about then, we are in that space right now in terms of being in our feelings, not necessarily in our feelings, but being aware. Like, and really being saying, okay, like, stuff is not going great. And, you know, I'm saying that it's okay to say, I'm not okay. And that's what she said. She was like, you know, hey, I've gone through some stuff. I'm still going through it. Ride with me here. I can recall even being in a Lauryn Hill concert when she was in, what's that pavilion in Northern Virginia? Nissan Pavilion, whatever. But I'm literally at the concert and she's singing off of that second album. My cousin's in the audience like, boo, play Miseducation. No one wants to. And I'm like, it's different, but she's showing you her growth, and it's a matter of how you build on where you are. I love that second album. Yeah, I loved it.
It was so authentic.
Absolutely.
And I think it. So to your point about what we're experiencing right now, going back to your comment about being invited to sit in stillness. That was her time of stillness. That she invited us in to see, like, listen, I got these few chords. I got a bunch of words, and I'm gonna give you my heart and my tears. Are you willing to accept that? Because that's all I have. The 4 agreements says to always do your best, right? And that our best is different at different times. And just like you gotta be okay with that. If I'm not okay, I'm okay with that. If I'm raspy on this thing and I'm gonna cry tears, I'm okay with that. This is not where I'm going to be forever. But guess what? While I'm going to take in every moment. And so I think it's just like the acceptance of knowing that, like, this is the part of the growth. You may not like the way it looks, but this is a part of the path. And to the point, like, are you going to be there for someone else or even for yourself. Like you're going to allow yourself to sit in it when it's time for you to grow.
And you know what I also say to everything you just said? I always say that at some point our pretend selves get tired. And we're like, I am just sick of the pretending. And it's like, how can I move on from this? Like, and you, when I'm fairly into a new job and I'm about 5 months in, and with my evaluation, my boss said, you know what, be Darius, like just be you. And it's like, you know, whether people accept it or not, like you have to realize that you are bringing change. So continue to be yourself and just be yourself. Don't try to pretend, and really don't conform. Like you don't have to conform to them, and you know, stop pretending to a certain extent, because it goes back to that conceding. Like, well, you know, and it's like, well, I've considered you so much. And let me back up. I think I had a conversation with a friend years ago, and he said something like, you know, I shouldn't have to change who I am for people to be comfortable in my space. And while I get that, I can still say, for me, I can still be considerate of who you are without still.
I agree with you 100%.
You said you agree with him?
I agree with you 100%. I'm a person that, like, how can I be me with respect to you and respect to me?
Absolutely. And that is being a human to another human.
So if you don't like me yelling, I might not yell, but I'm still going to talk loud. I won't yell, but I'm going to still be loud. I'm going to still get my point. So, like, because if you ask me to whisper, now you're disrespecting me.
You know I'm not a whisperer. You know I don't.
Right, you know that. Right, you can, like, if I'm on 10, I can get down to 7. But you asking me to go under 5, yo, like, you know that's not Desmond. Like, why you doing that? Don't try to explain me into it. That just means you don't accept me, and that's good with that.
I'm reading something.
Like that. Like, you make me conscious of it, and I'll bring it down. If you make me feel like you're trying to shut me up, I'm gonna get louder.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm just reading.
Like you say, well, I don't do that because you're not accepting me. You talk to me, Dad. My wife does a great job of, babe, you're a little too loud. Okay. Babe, you're a little too charged up. I go for a walk. Babe, and I might blow over like, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. And I'm quiet for the next 8 minutes, right? And I come back and tell you, you were right. You know, but it's just a matter of respect. It's just a whole matter of respect. Like, just don't gotta be the person where they at. And if you can't be the person where, doesn't make them a bad person, just mean you can't flow with them like that. And that's the problem. You just can't get with them like that. Like, I can love that. I can love the hell out of this woman. But if she tried to shut me up, this would not work.
Tammy said last night, she said, I think we try to take human traits from people. We have this idea of who you are in our mind. And when you start telling your humanity, when your pretend self gets tired and you start showing yourself fully, you know, we're thrown for a loop. But that's not a bad part. It just exposes our expectations that we project on someone else. And then also just learning how to flow and acceptance. Like, acceptance is a big thing. Acceptance is a huge thing.
A lot of people talk about relationship, but what a lot of people don't realize within this relationship, we had to really learn how to accept each other.
Big time.
Like really accept each other and still love that person. I don't like that about them. That's something they do. Is that disrespectful? If it's not disrespectful, like, yo, like, we don't really need to talk about it. Like, if that's imposing on one of your freedoms, I'm not trying to take nothing from you. It's just a mutual respect with and as long as you do that with people, you can get away with murder. Right?
And you know, and I think that's also that's still wanting to do the work. It's it's wanting to do the work because you know that it's worth that the work is worth it. You know, it's you see something in that person. We do it with friends. I mean, we're like, you know, I don't know why you did this, but you know, something I know that you may have been off or whatever. Let's talk it out, hash it out, and then get through it. It's like, you know, because you know that there's a value, and we all make mistakes, or you know, I think for me it's about the discernment piece, and I also feel that good people know good people. Like, there's someone said to me today that says, you know what, she said, I don't know what it is about Dean Greene. She said, but I just have a familiar connection with him. And I said, I don't know what it is either, but let's just keep it going. And we don't have to even talk about it, but we just operate from that connection. We operate from it.
So I'm going to end it right there because we have 10 seconds left.
Oh.
And so I just want to say thank you so much for being here. We love you. We appreciate